Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello and welcome my special guest, Robin Bilazarian, who's a licensed clinical social worker, international certified master trainer in emotional freedom technique, and has her Diplomate in comprehensive energy psychology. Robin has more than 45 years as a clinician. She's also an author, researcher, and international trainer. But in the last 27 years, her passion has been to blend body and mind, somatic therapies, into mainstream practice. She has a book called Tapping the Mighty Mind: Simple Solutions for Stress, Conflict, and Pain. And in this book, she shares stories about mind-body techniques using traditional therapies as well. She works extensively with mental health, in community mental health, and inpatient facilities and private practice. And I am so happy to have you with me here today, Robin. And I'd like people to know that I know you from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, where we met. I don't recall exactly when, but many years ago at one of our conferences, no doubt. And I have been watching you go around the world and share these messages of hope and transformation with so many and educating so many. And you were modest enough to not share the fact that you've received awards, but I know you're at least one award recipient. And today we're going to be talking about something that many people have, and that is how to overcome the fear of public speaking. So welcome, Robin.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's always a joy to see you.
Thank you. So is there anything else you want to add to what I've told the audience so far?
No, the only other thing I didn't think you said it is that I definitely do the emotional freedom technique and tapping, and I don't do it in a closet. I do it in community mental health, and then I worked for 14 years in a trauma hospital, working with doctors, nurses, medical students, using it 3 to 5 times every day. And so I'm really in mainstream mental health and wanting people to know that there are all kinds of ways to get better. And talk therapy is very helpful, and adding mind-body tools makes it even more helpful.
Oh, so true. Thank you for adding that. Yes, the trauma piece is so important. People are recognizing it more and more as being the foundation for so much of what we experience in later years and in multiple ways that we're not always aware of. But when we kind of get to the root of the issues, then it's like life opens up in a whole new way. And talk therapy definitely has its place. That's how I was trained too.
It does.
Yep. And but it's a game changer when you start to work with what I'd say is mind, body, spirit, or at least the body and not just the mind below the neck, and in integrating that. And then you don't have to throw away your tried and true tools. You can use them together. So
I agree.
Is it all right if you share a little bit about your story with public speaking, which I know is, they say besides death, it's one of the things that people fear the most.
Yeah. So I'll go way back, and then but I won't dwell there. I was an incredibly shy kid, and hung on my mother's backside, hiding. And if anyone laughed in the room, I actually cried because I thought they were laughing at me. And most of that, slowly I unraveled and ended up with with a whopping public speaking phobia. There was no way that I was going to be able to do public speaking. And of course, avoided any public speaking class in college, because why would you take something that you knew you were going to fail? Okay, kind of thing. And so as I developed my clinical persona, I wanted to speak. And a lot of my colleagues were teaching college classes. They were teaching a course, and they knew I wanted to speak, and they wanted to help me. And they invited me to come speak in their class, a short 15-minute presentation. And I could never do it. I could never do it. I would blush, and I would be flush, and I couldn't quite even remember my own name. And I'm sure that, I often talk about in anxiety, the thing for me that's the worst is the foggy, dissociated brain. And that's what happened to me. I was paralyzed and terrified and couldn't do it and wanted to do it. And so it was really disappointing, because I knew there were things that I wanted to say. I knew that and couldn't. I was frozen, kind of thing. I also know how and when I beat it, how and when I beat it. And I was taking a thought field therapy workshop, which is the mothership, if you will, of EFT. I was trained in that first, kind of thing. And I was taking it with a woman, a psychologist whose name is Monica Pignotti. She asked for a demo of someone that would do a public speaking phobia. And I certainly did not volunteer. I certainly did not volunteer, okay, because I can't, and she did a very nice job with a volunteer. And then she broke us into groups. And with someone who had never done EFT, or tapping, thought field therapy at the time, he asked me, what do you want to work on? And I said, my public speaking phobia. And he looked very perplexed. He said, well, why didn't you volunteer? And he said, because I would faint. Okay, and it's a slight exaggeration. I didn't faint, but whatever. And in the next 20 minutes, it got lifted dramatically, okay? Not totally, but dramatically, kind of thing. So it's actually kind of funny that I was mid-40s, and I was in a workshop on thought field therapy to get CEUs, but I knew it. I had been trained by others. I knew thought field therapy. And so she didn't ask for it, but I could not shut up. 45 years of not being able to raise my hand. So I became the unofficial co-leader. Okay, because I could not shut up after 45 years. I never raised my hand anywhere. Nearly almost left Penn School of Social Work because of having to speak in class. And honestly, I used to take a drink of wine to get through that class. Okay. Yeah, because I couldn't. So
self-medication for your anxiety.
Just that class, because you had to speak in that class. And, it was a debating class, and that was, over the top. But anyway, so Monica had Roger Callahan's $100,000 voice technology.
Now, for those who don't know, would you like to say why that's important, that name, Roger Callahan?
So Roger Callahan is the father, if you will, of what we do. He is the founding psychologist who developed and created thought field therapy. What most of us do now with the emotional freedom technique is a simplification, but most of the stuff that he came up with was just really brilliant. And so he also devised a method that he charged $100,000 to get this machine. Very few people have seen it, and I didn't see it either. But because I'm now her unofficial co-leader, she had it. She went up to her hotel room, and I was the therapist in the room. The person with the unbelievable public speaking now was the therapist in the room. And so the person who was being worked on would pick up the phone and just say, I want to get over this.
Mm.
And then Monica, she went up to her hotel room where it was, and then she would read to me very fast points. And I know the abbreviation, UN under the nose, UL under the lip. I knew all those.
These
And
were
then
tapping, acupressure tapping locations,
they are, yeah,
shortcuts so that you could direct the sequence of where to tap on the head and torso and maybe the hands.
yeah,
Correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly correct.
Okay.
So she read them very fast to me, and then I had the paper and I demonstrated, to the person where, copy me, if you will, and he got better, and he got better with
Oh.
it too. Okay, Gary Craig said, just use them all, use all the points, and I do instead of trying to use this $100,000 voice technology machine, and so I do. I use all 9 of his points and a couple others too,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So it was there, and I could not shut up. 45 years of not being able to talk.
The
And I'm just
dam
glad
broke.
the dam broke. And I'm just glad that I was able to do that. And then for those of you who know the emotional freedom technique, you have a main issue, but you also have other parts to it. And so there's a lot of parts to it that I had to go after. Fear of talking to people I don't know.
Mm.
That was one part. Fear of talking to a group of 20 people, a large group. A big one for me, I thought I had this whole thing beaten. I thought I did. And I got asked to speak at psychiatric grand rounds, which means I was speaking to the psychiatrist and all the residents. And I was frozen again. And so I had to go through the points again on my fear of speaking to people that I considered smarter than me.
Oh.
Okay. And at the end, what happens when you go through the points is you come up with a cognitive shift or a spontaneous insight. And my insight at the end was they are smarter than me, but not in EFT. They don't have
Yeah.
EFT. Okay. And so I did that. In addition, though, so I'm in my 40s, age wise, and I've not done public speaking, tried, couldn't even get my name out. So I also went to Toastmasters. And
Okay.
Toastmasters is a speaking club, and you do 5 to 7 minute speeches. And I stayed there for about 3 years trying to develop skills because I had no skills in public speaking. And
Mhm.
but I would never have been able to go to Toastmasters. In fact, they ask you, what is your goal for the first speech?
Mhm.
And I know he thinks I was kidding. I was not kidding. I said to survive.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
To not have a cardiac arrest or any of those kind of things. Because this was not a mild speaking phobia. This was
Right.
one where I really dissociated and barely knew my name. And so
Wow.
that's the beginning of the story.
Can I
And
pause you for a moment?
you can.
I love the story and there's so much richness here, but I'd like to just stop for just a moment and just recognize a couple things that I think are common for people who are hardwired to be sensitive. And it's the fear, the paralysis, it's the extreme self-criticism. They're smarter than me, and maybe I have nothing I can offer, or they're going to be upset with me, like I'm going to do something wrong. You aren't exactly naming those things, but I know that this is what people who are anxious tend to believe. It's basically the world isn't safe. And so then that shutting down is so complete. And yet you have this incredible desire to be seen, to hear, to connect. And it's that life force energy is what pushed you through this incredible barrier. But just how you shared, like you needed a little bit of alcohol to help before you had the tapping protocols to help you to regulate your system. But I just want people to understand that whether it's a fear of public speaking or something else, that we tend to carry, sometimes sensitive people tend to carry these burdens that are invisible, but they stop us from living our life fully. So I just want to kind of add that in a little bit.
Oh, Laurie, incredibly well said. No, incredibly well said. I sometimes say that phobias and fears and social anxiety, which is a part of social anxiety, a fear of being judged, fear of not, feel foolish, being embarrassed, all those kind of things. I sort of call it a self-imposed jail
Mm,
because nobody is telling me that I can't do these things, but I can't. and the mind, body, spirit techniques are the key to get you out of that jail.
Yeah.
You know, I was not a young therapist at that point. I had been a therapist for, you know, perhaps 15 to 18 years and had looked for the answer to that in many other modalities, mostly talk therapies.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different deal when you add that to talk therapy. And I like talk therapy. I do a lot of talk therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but I also do this every single session for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on what is presented, because it just goes to a different place, you know?
It's this invisible wiring, and we're
It
not
is.
quite sure exactly what it unlocks, but language and even emotion have boundaries around how far you can go and how deep you can go. And this other way of unlocking the body energies, whether it's the chakras, the meridians, whether it is some kind of an energy flow or an unconscious opening up or some sort of brain functioning or a biochemistry, there's something about telling the body you're safe, it's okay, while also introducing something that's upsetting or distressing. At the same time, that contrast, it's like, I think of it as like Control Alt Delete.
Yeah.
Restarting the computer, it's like whatever programs are running, it sort of like temporarily wipes them out so that you can have new learning come in. And then that life force of I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm okay has a foothold. And then you can start to melt away some of these old programs that just don't, they're not relevant any longer. So
Yeah.
anyway, I don't want to
Yeah.
interrupt the flow of your story, but
No, not
I
at
think it's a
all.
context for
Not at all.
what is this? And it sounds so
Yeah.
magical. It sounds like snake oil. Like, how can you have a 20-minute
Yes.
session with someone who's never been trained? And
Yeah.
suddenly, after 18 years or 45 years of having this phobia, it's like a lot of it got suddenly reduced. How curious.
How curious, right? Yeah. How curious. So I have done this with others too.
Okay.
Okay. You know, I've done this with others a lot. And when we were live before COVID, I would take someone who was similar, who just could barely volunteer. And then they could not be quiet the rest of the workshop and kind of crack them up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can I read something from my book about
Oh,
I
please.
was yeah, this was the New Jersey Social Worker of the Year. And her issue was this, by the way, was a conference at NESW. It was my largest conference. It was my first conference, and there was 175 people present. And they send you a letter the week before that says, please bring handouts for, and there's a blank thing. It said 175 people. And I called them and said, this is a misprint. And they said, it's not. Okay, so in front of 175 people, this is what happened. Okay, and not that it was traumatic for me, but I can also tell you right now, this was May 4th, 2004. the, date, the date's in there. Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, she raised her hand. She was the social worker of the year. She needed to give a acceptance speech, not that night, the next night. Okay, so her wide eyes scanned right and to left and back again. She could not find it. It was gone. Paradoxically, she wasn't sad. In fact, she felt immense relief. It had only been a brief 15 minutes since she had anonymously been selected from the rear of a packed Atlantic City hotel auditorium. Perplexed, yet clearly laughing, she enjoyed the profound physiological release of her body's tension. Incredibly, this relief correlated with the odd, innocuous light touch of facial, upper arms, and hand acupoints called EFT and tapping. Within minutes, this 2005 New Jersey's Social Worker of the Year's lifetime terror of public speaking effortlessly resolved. Further, 175 equally baffled workshop participants stood witness to this rapid change. This happens all the time with EFT and tapping. That same night, I guess it was the same night, my memory, that same evening, notes cast aside, her acceptance speech flowed passionately as she articulated her efforts about working with international atrocities. She told me there wasn't a dry eye in the place. She reported of the 800 people in the audience. They felt privileged to celebrate her deserved honor and newfound confidence in expecting herself. In an email in 2013, she said it's still gone. By the way, I also duplicated that with the 2008 New Jersey state social worker, and I write about that. But that's essentially, I felt the same way. It was like it was there and then it was gone, and that's pretty miraculous.
It's
The irony,
incredible. You know, we talk about the apex problem, and basically, I never quite understood why that word, but the idea here is that you almost go into a state of denial about the fact, if you can believe this, that you ever had a problem. So sometimes, you know, you go your whole life maybe with a problem, and then you have this transformation that happens, and then people will say, "Well, isn't that incredible?" And the reaction is like, "Well, it wasn't so bad," or you undermine the fact that you had a problem. It's almost like you become a different aspect of yourself where your past history somehow gets psychologically erased almost.
yeah. I like your metaphor of delete, alternate delete, reinstall,
Yeah.
a new
Yep.
program, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Here's the irony to the story. So I'm probably 45, 48 around that time. And it's 20 years later. And now I speak all over the country and all over the world and to a very large audience. And I pull people out of the audience. I may have 70 to 120 people in the audience. And I pull people out and I do a live demo on someone with a phobia and also someone who has physical pain.
Huh.
And so the irony is the very thing that I dreaded my whole life has now become an addiction. I just can't speak enough, which is just kind of ironic, right? And so yeah, it's kind of funny that that whole spin. So I guess it's the point of why melt a phobia and why meltophobia? Because they inhibit you from so much that you want to do. And they do. They inhibit you from public speaking, and they can inhibit you from social anxiety, where you decide that you can't get another job, that you're stuck in a job because you can't go to an interview.
Mhm.
And those kind of things are uh, pretty damaging.
Or not feeling comfortable to talk to people. I was also shy as a child and still am actually. I do better in small groups than big, but I'm also a performer. So I learned from an early age to dance from age 3 and was on the stage as a young child. So I learned how to use, without knowing it, the silent language of energy to make
Mhm.
myself feel safe and to expand my energy field into a way that felt intimate, even in a big crowd. So I'm able to do those things, but my comfort zone is not that. I have to push myself to kind of do, and I have been over the last 10 years, pushing myself more and
Yeah.
more to do those things. And it's feeling very natural now. Um, but it's not my comfort inside my core. And so these things are possible. We can rewire and reroute ourselves. From my experience, I found that a lot of my fears weren't fully my own. That some of them were ancestral, had ancestral roots from my immediate family and from long ago. And also that being an empath, picking up on the emotions, thoughts, and feelings and energies of others, and that I was sort of like a conduit for it. So I would go from feeling completely secure to walking into an environment and getting completely triggered. And I knew it wasn't me. I mean, it took a long time to distinguish that, but it was almost like going into an electrical field. Like you're
Mhm.
on the grass and then there's an electric field and you're like, zzz. You're like, what was that? And if you don't think to yourself, what's wrong with me? Oh my God, I'm having a panic attack, or I'm anxious, or am I getting sick? But if you say, that's curious, I wonder what I just stepped into. You know, we do it all the time with, let's say, odors or sound, and we don't think, oh, that smell is me, or that sound is like a car horn is me, my body. But when it comes to these invisible things inside of us, we personalize it as normal. And it's so freeing to just go, yeah, that's not me. And this is what I can do. And I can work with it or get away or cope or do something to shift it so that I'm not locked into this like invisible force field. I don't know if
Yeah,
that connects with your
I think,
story.
yeah, I think that it's sort of, what you're saying, I'm bouncing off of you, is it's sort of an extreme form of compassion.
Yeah.
And you can have no compassion, and you can have normal compassion, and then you can have excessive compassion where you pick up everything.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult. I don't think I'm an empath. I don't think I am, but I definitely know that I walk around with I'm not a trauma survivor, but both my parents were. And I know that I'm the child of trauma survivors, and it's there. It's a part of who I am.
Yeah.
It's also probably why I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
I was doing therapy with my parents probably from the age of 3. Okay.
Mm. Yep.
Kind of thing. And that may have been the fear. That may have been why I was so terrified, because really horrible things did happen to them. And even though they did override it. They actually did. Okay. Their goal was to have a better life with each other, and they did. But it was there. It was background, and maybe not always background.
Yep. Yep. I think this is very, very common experience for a lot of healers and therapists and
Mhm.
artists too. People who create, taking moments or even longer than moments of pain and metabolizing them inside of ourselves, and then hopefully transforming them or expressing them, but not always. And sometimes getting trapped in that darkness.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that about your family story. Um, we're going through and have been going through planetary trauma. And there are people who can pick up on what isn't said, but is present. And then it's like, how do you work with it? So,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for your service to not only
Yeah.
your parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, yeah. And I think that you have to protect yourself a little bit. I protect myself from the news, and
Uh-huh.
I watch the 6:30 national news half hour, and then I'm done.
Hmm.
That's what I can handle. I can't watch all that's going on everywhere,
Yeah.
in the world. And so so that's a way to protect yourself too. And I have to do that because I feel it too much. I feel the world's trauma. We've got 2 wars. We've got such a divide in terms of politics. It doesn't even matter which side you're on. You're just so furious at the other side. Yeah. So I distance myself from that.
Yeah.
It's also the nature of the work that we do, that
Right.
we need a break.
Need a break. You need to have joy. You need to have
Yes.
compassion for yourself, time away to recuperate, to explore and be creative. And we've never been asked to be psychologically connected to the globe on a mass scale before. And
Yeah.
we're designed to work within small community and um, to have a feedback for what's going on in the immediate. And so to have all of this information overload is going really against the way we've been designed for so long. And
Mhm.
so whatever it is that people can do to create that space for themselves is good. Some people choose to actually only read the news and not watch so that they can pace themselves as to what they choose to read, for how long and when, and to take pauses and to think, or to reflect or whatever, so that you are in control of the intensity and the timing and so on. But also, anyway, people have to find their own way. But yes, I can relate to that compassion overload or empathy overload and having to have good boundaries. Yeah. And it can sneak up on you.
It
You
can sneak
think
up
you're
on you.
doing a good job. I'm finding lately that I'm having to reground and recenter myself throughout the day, where before I used to do it maybe every other day or once a day. If I forgot, it'll be fine. And it's like I can't get away with that any longer. So
Yeah. Um, so in working with the emotional freedom technique and tapping, we are demonstrating on ourselves where these points are. And therefore, we are working with our own reaction to the horrible things that they had to endure. And so my clients will tell me pretty horrible things because it's the truth. It's what happened. And I react too. And I'm furious that these things happened. And the EFT tapping takes care of my compassion fatigue, my empathy, my overload, and stuff like that. So by the end of the session, they're good and I'm good too. Okay.
yes. And so
And so
for those who are just listening and not watching, I just would like to add that while you said that, you actually demonstrated. So would
yeah.
you like me, or would you like to describe what it is that you're doing for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So you can use light touch or tapping. And so you begin on the side of your hand, then I'm at the top of my head. And what you're usually doing is repeating what the client has said to you, and they're repeating it back. So inner eyebrow, I would be saying, and this horrible thing happened. And they would say, yes, this horrible thing happened. Outer eye, and this is very light touch. This horrible thing happened, and they would repeat, this horrible thing happened. Under the eye, under the nose, under the lip, collarbone, under the arm. And like most people in our field, I have two that I've added. Okay, so I still use the gamut spot, which is on your hand. It's on the back of your hand between your little finger and ring finger, straddling the knuckle. And I use a heart hold too, and that comes from training that I've had on that and that technique also.
That's
Um,
when you have one palm over the other crossed on top of your heart and you take some deep breaths. Yeah. And so what you're doing is just a repetition of just a couple of taps, light taps, or you can also hold or massage those points that you talked about. And there's
right.
many charts for people who are interested that you can get for free, and that shows you the different tapping points. So
Yeah, I think if you just Google the emotional freedom technique or tapping, you'll have many, many charts.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you
And
for that.
truly, they say it's a sister of acupuncture.
Yeah.
It's acupressure for the emotions.
Right. Acupressure, it's acupuncture without needles.
No needles, right? No needles, two
Yeah.
fingers.
So you're working on the endpoints of some of the meridians, not all of them, and that are supposedly tied to different emotional states. And it's a matter of where do you tap here or there? There's some debate about maybe some points are better than others and so on. And do you do spleen and not, and all these things. So
Yeah,
you can
right.
get into all the technical stuff. But basically the idea is self-regulation.
It is. It is. And what's very interesting is that it is emotional dysregulation that we're correcting. And the irony is that because it is a sister of acupuncture without the needles, I do a ton on pain management as well
Mhm.
using these techniques. And they have the potential to really help in the opioid epidemic.
Oh,
Because if you don't need opioids and you can manage pain another way, then you're not going down that dark, slippery slope.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, they have a lot of benefits. And yeah.
Well, it's wonderful. I love hearing your stories, and thank you so much for your generosity at sharing your vulnerabilities. I think it makes it more relatable than just saying, oh, this technique, or I've worked with clients, but when you hear it and see it, and they say, well, what about people who are skeptical? And my answer to that is when they themselves or their loved ones have transformational experience is when minds change. Um, I was raised in my graduate program to be highly skeptical of things like this. And in fact, my beloved professor, who was the clinic director, wrote a piece about how EFT and TFT were snake oil. And he
Yeah,
wrote that in clinical psychology
I know.
journal. And I thought, oh my goodness, how can I like try to
Mhm,
reconcile this? And, he's a blessed memory now, but I wish that he was around so
mhm.
that I could say it's really, I understand the concerns. And when you hear things like $100,000 voice activated machine, then you get suspicious, right? Or you hear about
Absolutely.
the 20-minute cure, you get suspicious. And all of that, you should be suspicious. But there's so much, we have so much research now, so many stories and research, showing changes in biochemistry from this and brain changes. So
Mhm.
the time is coming.
Yeah, I think when you link it to acupuncture and acupressure, it's 2 to 5,000 years old, depending on who you read. And if it didn't have any value, it would have died in the dust a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's it. It's interesting, Lori, because I speak at maybe 5 graduate schools. I do workshops on this for them for Rutgers, Maryland, yeah, Boston College, a bunch of them. And the graduate school that I went to won't have me for a workshop.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I keep thinking about overriding that decision and going to the dean, and then I think it's not worth yeah.
Let
So,
them come to
we're
you.
in this, yeah, we're in the same world.
Well,
That's
one of,
okay.
right. One of the things that is going to help change that, and that actually ACEP has been working on for a couple of years, is the first elective graduate course for mental health in graduate students on energy psychology with theory, research, and practice. So we're close to launching. So maybe some of the schools that you teach at might be willing to do a pilot run. So I'll talk with
Yeah,
you later about that.
yeah.
But
Hook up with me.
once graduate students start to learn more, then the
Mhm,
next generation, yeah, is ready.
mhm. Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about public speaking, or maybe a goal that you have for yourself? Because there's always more things that we can learn, you know?
So I'm older. Okay. You can do the math. I've been doing this for 45 years. And my goal is to continue to speak once a month to large groups to teach them that in mainstream mental health. I only present to licensed clinicians. I
Mhm.
mean, I would present to others, but it is my goal to bring it into mainstream mental health. And I recently did a workshop in the Ukraine, virtually, by the way, virtually. Okay. And then last week I finished a 3-week series and doing this in Italy.
Mm.
And so it is international and it's happening. And I hope that we can get that acknowledgement from some of the licensing boards that we need. Okay. I'm a social worker, and every social work department grants CEUs for this, but some of the psychologists are a little slower in being able to recognize this as evidence-based. And I think that will be a turning point when we can get that. And it's not that we haven't been working hard on it. It's just there seems to be new and different obstacles every time we approach it.
Yes, yeah, we do have the ability to give CEs for teaching energy psychology. So
Which is wonderful. Yeah.
yeah,
Two psychologists. Yeah.
since
Which is
2012,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
psychology,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your inspiration. And thank you for spreading the word so that others will learn and grow. And it's just always a pleasure to spend time with you. You have a very warm and open and easy way about you that
Thank
makes
you.
it easy to take in new information, which I think is just so very important.
Ditto. So do you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. It was fun.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.